Welcome to another edition of Thought Leaders Live, where we talk with thought leaders in business, life, and all points in between. And today, I'm very excited to be joined by Dr. Wayne D. Wilson, who I think is kind of got a really good handle on how business and life really kind of meet at the crossroads. And he's an executive coach, cultural strategist, leadership expert, more than 30 years of experience. And today's going to join us to talk about how to lead high performing teams with trust, emotional intelligence, and clarity. Dr. Wilson, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to be here, and thank you for having me. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
So, we're going to explore why emotional intelligence isn't a soft skill, but it's actually one of the more important drivers of operational excellence. And you and I were talking about it before the show. I can't wait to get to the topic. But before we get there, Wayne, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your
Mm,
personal journey, and your professional one as well?
Happy to do so. So, I went to graduate school. I have a bachelor's in communications. I sold advertising for a little while. Hated it. Went to graduate went to graduate school. Um, Really went to graduate school for to pursue broadcasting, Christian broadcasting, and I went to Southern Baptist Theological Seminary and ended up in pastoral care and counseling. I got a job, a part-time job in adolescent psych, and I'll tell you the story because I think it matters to the conversation.
Yeah.
I switched my entire career track in graduate school, and I went home and I told my wife, I remember the day I did it. I said, I think I'm going to switch from the Department of Education to the Department of Pastoral Care. And she said, how come? I said, well, I've now had classes with three of the professors. I'm not exactly sure what they do, but I want to be like that. Like they were men of integrity. They had high integrity. They were very transparent, authentic, genuine. They didn't really bring in a pretense to the class. You could tell they cared, but they were very assertive. I was like, these are kind of men I want to be around and be like. And I switched my entire career track because I just wanted to be around them.
Yeah.
Right. That's the kind of impact that good leadership can have. So I got into the Department of Pastoral Care, and I studied counseling and psychotherapy and pastoral care. I got a master's degree in pastoral care and counseling in the chaplaincy and pastoral care work in the churches. And then I pastored for a little while. And I knew I just wanted to be involved with people individually. So I went back and I got a doctorate in really pastoral cares and pastoral psychotherapy and marriage and family therapy. So my doctoral work ended up being an organizational psychology project on the church I was pastoring, and how the dynamics of the leaders played into the culture of the church. So from the very beginning, I was applying counseling, psychotherapy, theology to organizational life. I left Louisville, Kentucky, came to North Carolina to run outpatient counseling centers for Wake Forest Baptist Health. 18 years. I spent 18 years running outpatient counseling centers for Wake Forest Baptist Health, doing counseling, psychotherapy, marriage and family therapy, and was an associate professor at Liberty University in counseling and family studies for almost the entire career. I did all of that at one time. So what I like to tell folks is when it comes to being an executive coach and working with organizations, remember that. I don't know if your listeners have heard it. I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. Remember that,
Hmm.
that commercial?
Right.
That's really where I function from as a coach and a therapist is just the life experience that I bring. So a lot of life experience coming to the leadership role.
Well, talk to us a little bit then, too, about your stint at Snyder Fleet Solutions and how you went from that hospital medical setting into the business world.
It's 100% relevant to our topic today. My coaching practice is called Pivot Coaching and Consulting, Pivot Services. That name came when I pivoted. At 50, I'd been doing all that I shared with you for 18 years, and I hit a wall, Greg. I was not plugged into the effect that all of that was having on me,
Hmm.
and the hours I was putting in, and the amount of just put your head down and keep pushing that I was doing, and I burn out at 50, and it was not pretty. It really is not pretty. And to make a long story short, I left the hospital. I left the businesses, the 4 counseling centers that I had built. I left the field, left counseling psychotherapy, and went into coaching. I had gotten certified as a coach, and I really said I can't do this anymore. And I had to do something else. And then so I left to coach. And one of my coaching clients was had recently moved into purchasing Snyder Fleet Solutions was Snyder Tire, and the ownership was transitioning, and he was purchasing it, and he hired me to be an executive coach. Really, that was the role. He hired me to be an executive coach for the mid-level managers and the executives. And for the next 10 years, I developed Snyder University. We built an entire talent management program from employee orientation, teaching tire techs to change tires, to executive legacy planning and strategic planning, and one-on-one direct executive coaching. So I worked throughout the entire organization, which was a gift because I got to work in human development and organizational development all the way through the organization. And it was an irreplaceable experience. So I spent 10 years leading in that organization and to build a culture. And we built what was an amazing culture there. In 2025, they downsized and eliminated my role, and I came back to pivot coaching and consulting. So I had the privilege of leading in that organization for a long time.
Well, their loss is everyone else's gain, because I think your message and what you're talking about with emotional intelligence is so important. And I wonder if you can take us to the example you were talking to me a little bit about before. There's two stories I want to get to, but the first one is you were talking about emotional intelligence to a group of executives and leaders. And give us a reaction and talk to us about how they compartmentalized.
Well, let's back the story up for just a second and give it some context. You have an interest in emotional intelligence, and you have a reason why that's of interest to you. I think that matters. Let's start there. So, just share for a minute where your interest in emotional intelligence comes
I have done a lot of reading on it in the last few years. I think that on a personal level, was hitting a wall in many areas and couldn't quite figure out why. And then I just started to had an encounter where I started to get some context, and I was like, "Why is this happening?"
from.
And started to do some reading on it, and I was like, "Oh, this is it."
Yeah,
Empathy. I have no empathy.
yeah,
I'm like
yeah,
just all internal. And then I started to apply some of the things I learned in my role as a leader for my company, and tremendous change in both how I coped with my coworkers, and then or my people I was leading, and then how they reacted to me. And this one guy's like, "You want," he had like glowing things to say about me, and said, "You." There was like a switch occurred.
Mhm.
So after that, I realized this. Gary Vaynerchuk says it's a superpower. Empathy is a superpower.
Is it?
So
Yeah, nice. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
after reading that, I'm just like, bang, because if you think about it, I mean, business, politics, life, EQ, to me, everything kind of points back to it.
It does.
So
So,
that's some context for
love
me.
it. It's a great context, and I'll put a frame around this, and then I'll tell you the story that you're asking me for. Had the opportunity to meet Stephen M.R. Covey when I was at Snyder University. Had the chance to do some studying with him around the speed of trust, his work on the speed of trust. It's a great book. If your listeners haven't read it, it's a fantastic book. I was doing training. A consultant for Franklin Covey was with me doing that training with my executive team. He introduced me to Stephen M. R. Covey. Got to meet Stephen M. R. Covey, and I said, I got to ask him. I said, so tell me the heart of where this came from. So why, after watching your dad, Stephen Covey, build this organization and you taking over, why trust? That was his word. He said, because trust is an executive superpower.
Hmm. There it is again.
He said the most effective. Jim Collins, Good to Great, level 5 leaders, trust. Business is done at speed of trust. High performance is driven, accelerated by trust. When you're emotionally detached, it's just all about the business. It's just all about the metrics and what you're trying to accomplish and just getting the work done. The level of trust is low. Level of engagement's low. Level of buy-in's low. Level of intensity's low. You just don't get the buy-in, right? So executives have this tendency to be kind of emotionally detached. In psychotherapy, we're taught not to bring ourselves to the room, just be kind of a detached blank slate, listen to the client. I learned that way. I think that's part of why I burned out, because I was
Yeah.
detached from myself, was detached from them.
Yeah.
I think executives are either trained or programmed or told from the beginning, like leave it at home, like don't bring home to work. So don't be personal. Don't don't engage personally. And I've noticed they don't want to do that. I have partnered with Vistage Worldwide to lead CEOs in a peer group environment. So I chair a peer group for all CEOs. And we were in our meeting the other day, and one of the members brought a very personal issue, and he'd really got personal in that meeting, and the members were teasing him, like they were going to bill him for therapy hours during the work. And I stopped the conversation. I said, "Y'all, you're missing the boat here.
Yeah.
You have so compartmentalized your personal life from your professional life, your emotional life from your present life. How what matters to you personally matters to you at work. You've so compartmentalized it. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot. That was my burnout story. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot, and people are not going to trust you, and you can't bring your whole person. That they're trained that way or programmed that way, and they don't bring their whole self to the role. How can other people trust you to follow you and do hard things for you and go the extra mile for you when they don't even really know who you are? Like, you only bring part of yourself to the job. It's just it's incongruent, right? Is that fair? It's incongruent.
That's an interesting reaction that you got from the group. And to me, that's a symptom of how maybe dysfunctional that company culture was, and how maybe insecure a lot of those people were. Maybe it was a bigger group,
Mm,
and that culture isn't along those lines. I was on a call with a Zoom call, weighing with like six other agency owners one time, and everybody went around the room and said, "What was your best thing? How'd your week go? Share one thing." Everybody had glowing success stories.
of course.
Got to me, and I honestly did not have one that week. And in fact, I had like three setbacks or so. And I was like, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I really had a cruddy week. After I said that, everybody in the room went back around and shared their problems as well.
Right. Right.
And not only that, it not only did that, it built this little connection suddenly with everybody, whereas before I think we're kind of, just trying to challenge each other. So it's a real shame that nobody in that group, and I bet some people came up. I'd be interested if some people came up to that guy afterwards, the person who shared that, and connected with him.
I expect that over the course of the next 3 to 4 meetings, it will change the culture of the group because somebody broke the ice
Yeah.
and somebody said it's okay to be yourself, right? And the group won't fall apart, and we're not going to spend 4 hours crying together, and we're not going to lose control. It's okay. Like
Yeah.
you can manage it. It's going to be all right. So I would imagine that it's really that the group will ultimately thank him for his transparency of just sharing uh, really personal thing and tying it into his work and his profession. Yeah,
But you bring up a good point here in that this is, there's probably a lot of fear behind what
I
happened
think
there.
so. I really think so. You
Like
could
you
see
said,
it. You could feel it in the
oh,
room. It's kind of
I
like,
bet everybody was like, too much.
oh my
And
gosh.
Brene Brown has said that, sometimes you got to be careful how much you share, um, which is fair. But, in this case, I think this is where Dr. Wilson comes in, where it's like, okay, I'm the exec. I want to know how to manage that situation. I want to bring that kind of attitude to my company. What do you tell them? How do you help executives kind of be a little more vulnerable and create those kind of moments?
I'm gonna go back to a quote that rings in my head that one of my seminary professors taught me, and there's context to it. So I'm gonna tell that to you real quickly. So I'm a 20-year-old kid, and I'm in the Department of Pastoral Care. I'm learning to teach and preach and be a chaplain and be in churches and lead people. And he calls me in his office one day and he sits me down. He says, I need you to be willing to work on something for you, but also for me in this class. He said, clearly you work really hard and you know your stuff, and clearly you're always able to share content. But he said, frankly, everybody thinks you're full of shit. What? He said, yeah. He said, no one cares what you know until they know you care. He said, son, that's what he called me. He said, son, who you are is more important than what you do or what you know. I need you to bring more of who you are and stop telling us everything you know. Does that sound like a good executive board meeting, executive team piece of advice? Me too. I need you to bring more of who you are and less of what you know. Why don't you take your mask off a little bit and let your team see what you care about, see what matters to you, understand your passion behind service and why that matters. Won't you bring a little bit more of who you are to the table and not necessarily just everything that you know? So it's a little bit of courage to kind of take your persona and put it in the corner, leave your ego at the door, so to speak, and bring what troubles you, what you're afraid of, the things that is being projected for the company that scare you and why they scare you, and uh and what matters most to you. There's some great examples of what the owner that hired me at Snyder would do that allowed people to see who he was, and they followed him. They wanted to work for him. They wanted to perform for him. They wanted to hit their numbers because he would bring that authenticity to employee orientation, and people would connect with him in a matter of minutes.
Do you have an example for us that comes to mind?
Yeah, I tell this story fairly frequently because I would watch the impact. You're talking about 50 people in a room. They're brand new employees. They've been flown in from all over the country. They're terrified. They're tire techs, and they're in this big room corporate room, and the president of the company walks, the owner of the company walks in. His name is Marty. Marty walks in the room, and he's going to speak to the room. And 9 times out of 10, he would say, there's a lot to learn in here, and there's a lot to say, but I only want to say two things today. And he would always say the same two things. First thing he would say is, I have one question for you. And I'll just play this with you, Greg. So I'm going to ask you the question. Greg, if you're in a room full of new employees in a company and the president of the company says, I'm going to ask you a question. Greg, who's the most important person at Snyder Fleet Solutions? What do you think you would say?
Well, I hope they would say the customer, but I think maybe some would be like the CEO.
Yeah. Everybody in the room would raise their hand. They would go, the customer. The customer is the most important person. The customer's always right. The customer's the most important. Marty, shake his head. He'd go, nope. Most important person at Snyder Fleet Solutions is you.
You.
And I want you to hear that from me today. Because if you're tired and you're hungry and you're sick and you're worried about your child and your marriage is going down the tubes and you're sick, you cannot show up for the customer well. But if you are well rested, if you're making the money that you need to make, maybe not what you want to make, but what you need to make, you're focused, you're taking care of yourself, you're going to show up for our customers exceptionally well. You are the most important. Never sacrifice yourself for the customer. And everybody would go, what? I would survey people. I would go visit a plant. 4 years later, and I would ask them, what do you remember about orientation? I remember that thing that Marty said. I was the most important person at the company. And then he would say, the second thing I want to do is I want to talk about our core values. And he would talk about our 5 core values. And he would talk about what's most important. And he would share why that is important to him and where those core values came from him. And they were the 5 most important things to him and why they were important to him. And he would share very personally about that. Everybody remembered them. You could ask people, 3 years later, what are the most important things at Snyder Fleet Solutions? Service, integrity, growth, encouragement, enrichment. Everybody would know. It's like that because he made it very personal, right?
That's Neuroselling by Jeff Bloomfield. If
Okay.
you're a little
Okay.
cynical on it, but it's actually make that emotional connection first, and then this is from a sales process. Make that emotional connection, and then you can bring in those value. Exactly what he wanted to communicate from the company level. If you would have flipped that and tried to talk at the company level without making that connection, probably wouldn't have happened. But I think what's probably more important than that neuroselling formula is the authenticity behind it
100%.
and the fact that he brought his heart. And
100%.
I'm going to assume, Wayne, that he did that then every day, bringing that same attitude. So it wasn't just lip service at that orientation, that they saw that from him day in and day out. How do you bring that day in and day out? I mean, isn't that totally emotionally taxing?
Yeah, actually, it is, but it's far less taxing than trying to keep track of 2 people. It's
Explain that.
far less taxing than showing up at work, putting on your business face, going through the work, shoving everything emotionally in a closet somewhere, and then at 5 o'clock, you flip the switch, and you need 3 or 4 drinks just to kind of be yourself again. Because you've compartmentalized your whole self. And okay, you have a bad day and you show up and you're not always happy and joyful, but you're at least somewhat transparent. Then people learn to roll with it, and people learn to be themselves. And it's
Wait,
really not as emotionally taxing. I would not have burned out had I just been transparent with where I was tired and lonely and not doing well and done something with it. I would not have burned out.
Wayne, I think it's a good point. If you would share your personal story that you shared with me earlier about your wife and and the visit from the physician.
So I spent almost 20 years in a hospital environment. My son is a surgeon. We have been part of the medical community for a long time. I started learning counseling and pastoral care as a chaplain in a hospital. I worked in Allison Psych. I've been in a hospital environment a long time. Hospital environment, man, you show up and work. You show up and do your work. Like and my son now is a surgeon. I asked him about this one time. I said, like, do they teach you that? Because like, do they teach you to shut it off? And he's like, yeah, Dad, they hand you a knife and you got a body in front of you. You can't worry about who that person is.
Hmm.
Or you have to think about them as a patient and as a case. And you cannot think about them as a person. And we were talking about this. I said, that's interesting, son. I said, let me tell you a quick story that has really impacted me. So my wife is a breast cancer survivor. She had breast cancer in 2012 and has survived that. But I remember the day that I knew the surgeon that she got referred to was a colleague of mine that I had met in a Rotary Club, and I'd gotten to know him really well. So we went to see him, and he'd been a surgeon a long time. And I remember the day that he told my wife and I that my wife had cancer. That surgeon took our hands and cried with us. He was emotionally available enough to be able to be our surgeon and care. I'll never, ever forget the impact of that. Do you think I trusted him with my wife's life?
Well, you
Darn
had
right
to.
I did. Darn right I did. It was amazing. I don't know how he learned to shut all the advice that he ever got from the medical community and be that present. But you can tell it was powerful
Yeah.
for a surgeon to be that available personally and professionally. And my son was flabbergasted. He said he had to have done his own personal work and learned to do that because they do not teach you that as a surgeon.
Well, when you told me that story, the follow up question was, gee, that's really fascinating. I wonder how he compares to someone who can
Yeah.
compartmentalize.
Yeah.
Is he going to be more likely to burn out because he's showing those emotions, and or is the person who compartmentalize just going to implode like you did at the age of 50?
I'll tell you. I'll tell you fact. He was 68 years old when he
Yeah.
did the surgery.
There it is.
He worked till he was 73 as a surgeon.
Having those experiences over and over and over again, I'm
Every
sure.
day. Every day. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something about that he learned to care that empowered him for the long haul as a surgeon, right? And I think there's something that just about authenticity in whatever form that comes that makes that empowers an executive for the long haul to not burn out in their 50s or to be able to lead that organization well into their 60s and 70s, to pass that leadership on to somebody else, all those kinds of things, right? Makes that really, really a powerful experience for surgeons and executives and other leaders. It empowers you for the long haul.
One thing I wanted to follow up with you on too, Wayne, was the whole idea of that executive who wants to build that culture and is worried about probably him or herself how they are going to do it themselves and train themselves. And I just want to share one thing. Like, I personally found that once I really just all I try and do is focus on being empathetic,
Yeah.
Like, I don't need some huge training manual
Yep.
because I'm in the moment.
That's
And
it.
that,
That's it
that,
right there. That's it
that,
right there.
thank you. That moment is guiding me, and my heart's guiding me in my head, of course, but being there and being present, it's amazing what you find.
It's not complicated, is it?
No, it's not.
It's more about letting yourself than having to learn a bunch of skills.
Hmm.
It's more about letting yourself be present in the moment. Um, it's like giving yourself permission more than having to learn to do something different.
Right. Well, Wayne, I'm not sure if we hit on everything that we had in the show description, but I sure do believe that you really delivered the message about how powerful EQ is. And I found this really inspiring and
Nice.
special conversation. I thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. I will say, I think what we did capture well is that emotional intelligence is the superpower of an executive. It does indeed foster trust, and trust fuels performance. So I do think we nailed that today.
And let's be honest, I mean, it also requires coaching. I mean, my wife is kind of my personal coach just
Nice.
because she is a parent coach. And
Nice.
so a lot of what I did in my own personal growth, I had to work with her and sounded a lot of stuff because those moments, you might be in the moment and you're gonna have some back steps and relapses and things like that, and you just keep learning. But if someone wants to work with you, Wayne, how do they get a hold of you?
I try to make that really simple. It all starts with a relationship. I'm at this stage of my life, I'm really interested in building helping relationships that empower people to live their best lives and lead with influence. And so they can reach me at coachdrwayne.com. Is my website, and I've got anything that you really want to know about me is on LinkedIn. So you can find me at Dr. Wayne, Dr. Wilson at on LinkedIn, and in those two places you can find just about anything that you want to. And you can reach me. You can book an appointment in either one of those places. An appointment doesn't cost you anything. The first couple of hours of our conversation is just me as trying to figure out if I can help you and how, and then we'll go from there.
Fantastic. Well, Wayne, thank you so much for joining us.
You,
And
Greg.
sure. And thank you, everyone, for joining us in another edition.